So this episode's all about electrical. Now this is a lot of tedious, just one little wire, check the wiring diagram. Another little wire, check the wiring diagram. So I'm not going to bore you with the wire by wire by wire. What I'm going to try to do though is show you big chunks, big steps, and also kind of how I do it, the tools that I use for it, just so, hopefully you learn something after the video is over. So stay tuned, watch along, hit the subscribe button if you're not a subscriber to see more awesome videos like this. Let's get to work.
The first thing that I want to do is attach the ignition coil and the new spark plug wires. So we're using MSD 8.8 millimeter wires, pretty standard, just crimping them. Make sure you have the right crimping tools. I'll link them down below for the ends. Other than that, the only real trick that I do is I use a little dielectric grease on the wires, and that helps the boots slide on nice and easily. That way you can hook them up, no problem. And then you just run the wires to your coil, easy peasy. A huge part of the time involved in this was spent back here by the box. So a lot of connectors just needed to be redone, wires lengthened. For instance, the 3 wires coming out of the stator all needed to be elongated. So I'll link these tools down below. They're for pulling the wires out of the connectors. And then just be sure on your butt connectors you use heat shrink like that to make sure that it's secure and watertight. Next, it was time to replace the main fuse of the whole bike. So this is the 30 amp fuse. It's in this weird old like barrel glass style housing. So I just put this little universal mini blade fuse that's made to go in line. I could get them in like packs of a dozen on Amazon, and that way you can splice them in all over the place. You'll see later in the video I also use those to replace all the main fuses for each of the systems on the bike. It's time to do the tail lights, and I'm done using those really cheap Amazon LED strip lights that break half the time with wires as thin as a human hair. Instead, I got these from a reputable company. Sure, they're a little bit more money, but you're building this thing to last. Why skimp on such an important role like your tail and brake lights? Now, because this is just a solid LED strip, you saw that little separator there a couple seconds ago. What that does is it means that the lights are on 50% power most of the time until you hit the brakes, and then they go to full power. So it's a way to get sort of dual functions out of just a regular strip of LED lights. I'm installing a dual pin connector into these because I want to be able to remove the tail lights sort of as an assembly, whereas most of the other stuff, you're just butt connecting together because you never plan on taking it back apart. And now it's time to really earn our paychecks here, boys. Let's take our attention to the front end and just put in the work, right? This is where you just have to put in the time, hours and hours and hours, finalizing all these connections, cutting everything to length to be the perfect length to make sure that everything, when you're done, can tuck inside that headlight bucket nice and neat without sort of cramming everything in, because I hate pushing and cramming everything into that headlight bucket. And it turned out really good, as you'll see here. Well, the wiring harness is just about done, and as you can see, this is the part that needs to enter the headlight bucket, and it is slim and streamlined, and we sure as heck trimmed a lot of fat. I think this is going to work out great. The only thing we have to do yet is this. So we're going to have to change each of these to a small mini blade style fuse and then tuck those in the headlight bucket too. That's what I like to do because it's still really accessible. Sure, you could tuck these under the tank or somewhere else, but then it'd be inaccessible. It'd be hard to replace if you had to. Because they're just the mini blades, I like putting them in the headlight bucket because there's room. Now there were 4 fuses in here from the factory, but I could eliminate the turn signal fuse, so now it's down to 3, and it is simple, easy peasy. This thing is what we replaced, and now we just have these 3 mini blades. I cut them at different lengths, that way they could sort of position themselves around the back of the bucket, and it fits great. Let's smash the battery cables. So what I'm using is number 6 stranded wire, and this is very, very fine threaded wire, so it's really easy to bend. We need a small one to go from the positive terminal to the starter solenoid. We need another one to go from the starter solenoid all the way up to the starter motor. Then we need one small grounding strap to go from the terminal to the frame. With the copper terminal all fluxed up, we can melt some solder in it. I like to make like a little pool of solder, and then you just take the wire and just dunk it in like some sort of middle school World Fest dunk tank, or whatever that means. Then get yourself some good crimpers. Go on and crimp that baby on and check it out. This thing is like a rock, not going anywhere. Because this is really fine stranded wire, it's really easy to bend and route under the engine all the way up to that starter motor. And then now that we've done it a couple times, we're getting pretty good at soldering and crimping these ends on. Nothing to it here, folks. It's all a matter of having the right tools. Just follow a couple YouTube videos and you'll be set. That's pretty much all I do. Check out the final product of all these cables. Here's the long one going from the starting motor down to the solenoid. Let's jump over to the other side right after this and check out the short cable going from the positive terminal just right over, jump into the solenoid. Now let's check out how I did the ground. So I thought the easiest and best way was just to run a short little cable here from the negative terminal and just right to the box itself that's mounted to the frame itself. This is going to be a nice, clean, secure connection and very small. Now I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, how is he going to hide all this stuff? Starting from the top, we see our final product here. Now, of course, we don't have it fully covered and wrapped up, and this will be tucked up over the engine. But look how clean this looks. It's only like a dozen wires, if that. All of that will be tucked into the frame there, and all of that is pretty much invisible behind these rear sets. I mean, check it out with those brackets and rear sets. And once that box and everything is all powder coated black, it is practically invisible. And this is at like eye level. So imagine it on the ground, nice and low. We did a great job of hiding pretty much all of the electricals on this motorcycle.
Now with the headlight on low beam, high beam, and those little daytime running lights, you might think that we're pulling a lot of amps, too much, that we might need to hook up a relay or whatnot, but I looked up the specs of that light, and even with all of the lights on, it's still pulling pretty much the same amount of amps that the normal like H4 halogen low beam would pull, just because it's all LEDs. So we're pretty good. We're set. Well guys, that is one more big item off of our list for our Virago 920 build. It is coming along very, very nicely. Thank you so much for watching, guys. As of making this video, I'm just over 900 subscribers. That 1,000 is going to feel good. I sure as heck am working for it. Thanks for watching. See you next time.